I suggested to the leaders, we gave them a shirt, and if they wanted to wear the shirt, I promise you it would have been fine. But I didn't hear a lot of complaints about us breaking precedent on that one. With respect to this trip, look, it was a pretty nice piece of scenery here. And you know, I take enormous pride in having been raised in the state of Hawaii, but we're here for business. We're here to create jobs. We're here to promote exports. And we've got a set of tangible, concrete steps that have been taken that are going to make our economy stronger. And that's part of what our leadership has been about. When I went to Europe last week, our job was to help shape a solution for the European crisis. And you know, a lot of folks back home might have wondered, well, that's Europe's problem. Why are we worrying about it? Well, if Europe has a major recession and the financial system in Europe starts spinning out of control, that will have a direct impact on U.S. growth and our ability to create jobs and people raising their living standards. The same is true out here. If we're not playing out here in the world's largest regional economy and the world's fastest regional economy, if we've abandoned the field and we're not engaged, American businesses will lose out, and those jobs won't be in the United States of America. So part of my job is to make sure that the rules of the road are set up so that our folks can compete effectively. Part of my job is to sell America and our products and our services around the world. And I think we've done so very effectively. And as I said, just to take the example of exports, we're on track to double our exports since I came in office. That was a goal I set. We're on track to meet it. That's actually been one of the stronger parts of our economic growth over the last couple of years. And I want to make sure that we keep on driving that. Truck time.
The Republican co-chair of the Super Committee went on TV today and said if the sequester happens, this idea of the automatic cuts on Medicare and defense, there was plenty of motivation and plenty of votes to change the makeup of these automatic cuts. I know you had a conversation with him about this and said that that was changing it in any way was off the table. I mean, you're going to veto this bill if that's the case, if it ends up they can't get a deal in the next 10 days. And then can you clarify your end of the hot mic conversation with French President Nicolas Sarkozy as it involved these other comments that can't happen?
Can I just say that Chuck's the only guy who asked 2 questions so far. So just when I cut off here, whoever was next in the queue, I'm messing with you. With respect to the Super Committee, in August, we negotiated to initiate $1 trillion in cuts over the next 10 years, primarily out of discretionary spending. But we also said that in order for us to move towards a more stable fiscal condition, that we're going to have to get an additional 1.2 minimum. I actually argued that we needed more than that. And the whole idea of the sequester was to make sure that both sides felt obligated to move off rigid positions and do what was required to help the country. And since that time, they've had a lot of conversations, but it feels as if people continue to try to stick with their rigid positions rather than solve the problem. Now, I've put forward a very detailed approach that would achieve $3 trillion plus in savings. And it's the sort of balanced approach that the American people prefer. It says everything's on the table. We've got to have discretionary spending cuts of the sort we've already put in place. We've got to have non-defense cuts. We've got to have defense cuts. We're going to have to look at entitlement programs. We've got to reduce our health care costs. And we're going to need additional revenue. And when we're talking about revenue, if we've got to raise money, it makes sense for us to start by asking the wealthiest among us to pay a little bit more before we start asking seniors, for example, to pay a lot more for their Medicare. Now, this is the same presentation that I made to Speaker Boehner back in August. It's the same kind of balanced approach that every single independent committee that's looked at this has said needs to be done. And it just feels as if people keep on wanting to jigger the math so that they get a different outcome. Well, the equation, no matter how you do it, is going to be the same. If you want a balanced approach that doesn't gut Medicare and Medicaid, doesn't prevent us from making investments in education and basic science and research, all the things we've been talking about here at APEC, that every world leader understands is the key for long-term economic success, then prudent cuts have to be matched up with revenue. My hope is that over the next several days, the congressional leadership on the super committee go ahead and bite the bullet and do what needs to be done. Because the math won't change. There's no magic formula, there are no magic beans that you can toss in the ground and suddenly a bunch of money grows on trees. You got to just go ahead and do the responsible thing. And I'm prepared to sign legislation that is balanced, that solves this problem. One other thing that I want to say about this, when I meet with world leaders, what's striking, whether it's in Europe or here in Asia, the kinds of fundamental reforms and changes, both on the revenue side and the public pension side, that other countries are having to make are so much more significant than what we need to do in order to get our books in order. This doesn't require radical changes to America or its way of life. It just means that we spread out the sacrifice across every sector so that it's fair, so that people don't feel as if, once again, people who are well-connected, people who have lobbyists, special interests, get off easy, and the burden is placed on middle-class families that are already struggling. So, if other countries can do it, we can do it. We can do it in a responsible way. I'm not going to comment on whether I veto a particular bill until I actually see a bill, because I still hold out the prospect that there's going to be a light bulb moment where everybody says, aha, here's what we've got to do. With respect to the hot mic in France, I'm not going to comment on conversations that I had with individual leaders. But what I will say is this. The primary conversation I had with President Sarkozy in that meeting revolved around my significant disappointment that France had voted in favor of the Palestinians joining UNESCO, knowing full well that under our laws, that would require the United States from cutting off funding to UNESCO. And after I had consistently made the argument that the only way we're going to solve the Middle East situation is if Palestinians and Israelis sit down at the table and negotiate. It is not going to work to try to do an end run through the United Nations. So I had a very frank and firm conversation with President Sarkozy about that issue. And that is consistent with both private and public statements that I've been making to everybody over the last several months. Ed Henry.
3 questions. Starting with Mitt Romney. Just one question, I promise. You started with a $447 billion jobs bill. 2 months later, many speeches later, you've got virtually nothing from that. You've got the Veterans Jobs Bill, which is important, obviously, and a lot of executive orders. But are you coming to the realization that you may just get nothing here and go to the American people in 2012 without another jobs bill, 9% unemployment, and then wondering about your leadership, sir?
I think, first of all, the American people at this point are wondering about congressional leadership in failing to pass the jobs bill, the components of which the majority of Americans, including many Republicans, think are a good idea. And that's part of the reason why the American people right now aren't feeling real good about Congress. Normally, by the way politics works is if the overwhelming majority of the American people aren't happy with what you're doing, you start doing something different. So far, that hasn't happened in Congress, and the Republicans in Congress in particular. They don't seem to have that same sense of urgency about needing to put people back to work. I'm going to keep on pushing. My expectation is that we will get some of it done now, and I'll keep on pushing until we get all of it done. And that may take me all the way till November to get it all done. And it may take a new Congress to get it all done. But the component parts, cutting taxes for middle-class families, cutting taxes for small businesses that are hiring our veterans, hiring the long-term unemployed, putting teachers back in the classroom. Here in the state of Hawaii, you have a bunch of kids who are going to school 4 days a week because of budget problems. How are we going to win the competition in the 21st century with our kids going to school basically half-time? The jobs bill would help alleviate those budget pressures at the state level. Rebuilding our infrastructure. Every world leader that you talk to, they're saying to themselves, how can we make sure we've got a first-class infrastructure? And as you travel through the Asia-Pacific region, you see China having better airports than us, Singapore having superior ports to ours. Well, that's going to impact our capacity to do business here, our capacity to trade, our capacity to get U.S. products made by U.S. workers into the fastest growing market in the world. And by the way, we can put a lot of people back to work at the same time. So I'm going to keep on pushing. And my expectation is that we will just keep on chipping away at this. If you're asking me, do I anticipate that the Republican leadership in the House or the Senate suddenly decide that I was right all along and they will adopt 100% of my proposals? The answer is no, I don't expect that. Do I anticipate that at some point they recognize that doing nothing is not an option? That's my hope. And that should be their hope too, because if they don't, I think we'll have a different set of leaders in Congress. All right? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.